Hi viewers, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Learners Podcast. In today's webinar, we are going to initiate a series of talks with the professionals from the industry and the academia about the post-COVID-19 employment and the employability scenario. In the discussion with me today, I am with Mr. Nushad from UAE. He is a psychologist and a professional, belongs to the airline industry. So welcome, Mr. Nushad.
Thank you very much for having me, sir, and my hello to everyone who is listening or viewing this program. My name is Noshad Anjum, and I'm currently based in UAE. I'm a psychologist, and also I belong to aviation industry, both as an air crash investigator and also as a pilot in one of the airlines here. Psychology. When I say psychology, it means that my interest has been in the organizational psychology as well. Currently, I'm part of the team which is looking after training and development, learning and development here in my airline. So, in that context, employability and careers and career counseling becomes part of what I do and have an experience with.
Thank you very much. When we talk about the employability, we generally discuss the graduate's potential to get a proper job after he completes his qualification. But with this COVID scenario, things are totally changing. हमने पहले नहीं सोचा इसके बारे में, हमने कभी नहीं इसके बारे में consider किया. This is going to be happen.
Exactly.
जो मेन विजिबल थिंग जो इस कोविड के सिनेरियो से सामने आई है वो है कि सोशल आइसोलेशन बोथ विद इन द कंट्री एंड विद इन द कम्युनिटी एंड अब्रॉड. कंट्रीज आपस में आइसोलेट हो चुके हैं और इसी तरह आपस में सिटीज ऑलमोस्ट आइसोलेट हो चुके हैं. एंड दिस डिपेंड्स अपॉन द इंटेंसिटी ऑफ द कोविड अटैक. हाउ लॉन्ग इट विल कंटिन्यू वी डोंट नो. सो दिस पॉडकास्ट, दिस डिस्कशन का मकसद मेरा जो था वो यही है कि हम इंडस्ट्री के लोगों से जो कि मुख्तलिफ सेक्टर्स के अंदर काम कर रहे हैं, हम इनसे डिस्कशन इनिशिएट करें और देखें कि क्या होने जा रहा है फ्रॉम द एम्प्लॉयमेंट पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू एंड आल्सो फ्रॉम द स्टूडेंट्स पर्सपेक्टिव, द एम्प्लॉयबिलिटी पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू. दोनों both are affected. Like if you see all the industry, even school, colleges, hospitals, factories, everything is stopped nowadays. Another thing is what I can see is the breaking up of the global scenario. हम एक global village की बात करते थे, world become a global village. वो एक disintegrate होता हुआ नजर आ रहा है. One thing is there, हमारे road links disturb हुए, our air links are disturbed, our commerce is disturbed, everything is disturbed, but except one thing, that is the digital connectivity. As we are talking now, we are having this discussion across the borders. You are in UAE and I am in Islamabad, but we can communicate through these digital technologies. And first thing. And second thing is, jobs will never end. What I feel, jobs will never end. The people will keep on working, and human beings and these societies will definitely, they will communicate, they will connect with one way or the others. हमने इस डिस्कशन में ये देखना है कि वो क्या शेप होगी, वो क्या चीज होगी, जिसको मैं बात करता हूँ कि रीशेपिंग द थिंग्स ऑल टुगेदर. तो आज की जो डिस्कशन में मैं आपके सामने 3 क्वेश्चन जो रखना चाहूँगा और हम इसके ऊपर डिस्कशन करना चाहेंगे. सबसे पहला तो ये है कि इस सिनेरियो को आप किस तरह देखते हैं. यूएई के पर्सपेक्टिव से अगर बात हो जाएगी तो और ज्यादा अच्छा हो जाएगा. एंड सेकंड थिंग, what kind of biases that can cause the errors in selecting the suitable career for the people. We are no more confined with the students only, but everyone is affected. So what kind of suitability is required there? And the last question that I would like to discuss is the definition of redefining the ethics, work ethics, or how would you define the ethics for these according to this new scenario?
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, whatever discussion we are having here today, this is not going to be an ultimate or final word. All the world right now is still evolving out of this COVID-19 situation. But what we can quickly take from history is that it is not the first time that humanity has been exposed to such a turmoil at such a large scale. It may not be specifically similar, which has happened previously, but there have been very big major disasters, which like even epidemics also. So I'm very confident that the human race is very resilient and they will very quickly come out of it. However, uh, there will be a lot of good things which will be happening out of this. This is my assumption. When I say good things, it means that whenever we develop a business model, whenever we even develop an industry, I'll just give you example of an airline industry. We are already seeing researches coming up. We are already seeing procedures coming up that let's suppose if there is another outbreak in next 1 or 2 years, then such measures should be taken or such resources should be made available that the airline industry should not suffer. The social distancing, while maintaining social distancing, can we still travel? So you can have an amazing amount of testing on the airport, how people will come, how they can do online testing, how they can check in, how they can board the aeroplane. So one of the best thing which I think COVID-19 has brought in, that all other industries, they never thought that this kind of isolation can also come in. And I'm sure that the kind of scientific backbone that we have behind all the businesses, now when the COVID-19 kind of social isolation model as an abnormality is considered, then major businesses will develop their own resilient methods to fight it if that happens in the future. So this is something good, I think, which has come out of COVID-19.
But
Now,
one thing
coming to the next.
I would like to stop you, like for example, one thing I am feeling, that is the confidence when we are saying the social isolation or the social distancing. A person, it's now becoming a difficult for one person to travel from one country to another country as a visitor. Conferences are stopped, things are get together like overseas, professional meetings are stopped. Like now people have converted to the on the digital form, they're not moving physically. So if for a person to travel from one country to another country, like even in a UAE, they would, I mean, give it not an easy, I mean, access to their country. He has to fulfill so many formalities. Don't you think this will stop the space of the activities, or it will affect it to some
That's
extent?
what I'm saying, that we have been taken by surprise as an industry, many industries. So this space reduction is, of course, is part of that surprise. But what I'm saying is that it has given us a chance now to review. As you see, already there are systems in place which were never seen before. Like now, you have a drive-through testing systems. It was very quickly adopted. Have you ever heard about it? No, you didn't. So similarly, so every business is developing very quickly to the requirement of this new system of social isolation.
They are looking the things in a new way. The same activities
Yeah,
we take.
everybody. I'll give you example. I am a counselor or a therapist. Now we are literally reviewing that do we need to have such a big office in Islamabad F7 with such a big manpower there, where if I'm able to do that work from home right now, and my patients are also easy, not burning fuel from DHA coming all the way to Islamabad, waiting for 2 hours in the traffic and coming for a session for 45 minutes.
Excellent, excellent. And same thing is in our scenario. I am a professor in university, and now we are conducting the online classes. So I was the
Exactly.
same feeling developed in my mind that why students are coming into the classes then. I mean, they can save their fuel a lot if they come once or twice I mean, in a week. If the things are normal, then all the
Absolutely.
things they can do from the home. So through these
it will have a lot of impact on the environment as well when we talk about greenhouse effects and everything. So let's keep that discussion on one side, because that's not the scope for today.
Yeah, for today, yeah.
But today we see that it may not be a very good news for people who are going to universities with the perspective of getting a job. Because what I see, that job related industry is going to shrink, and the jobs will not finish for sure, but the opportunities will start to shrink and shrink, because more and more digitalized kind of resources and services will become available. But there is an important factor which I want to highlight here. When students are now learning about organizational behavior or skills which are related with them to work in an organization, they might need to now change the chair on that table where they are sitting, and instead of sitting across the table as a candidate, they might start to think that now they have to study it on the other side of the table as an employer of maybe 3 people's unit. What I mean to say here is that more and more people should now think about that employability, when it comes to them getting an employment, may be converted on a small scale businesses where they can provide. What it really implies is that our mind
they will
is
provide their services. I mean, in place of a person, employer to hire so many employees in his office, he can take the services from the different people who are staying in their homes, and they are offering that gentleman or the employer a services.
I'll just give you an
They are being
example.
paid for that. They are being.
I was having an online class yesterday for Adobe Professional Video Editing. So this guy who was giving me that class, he's a 23-year-old student, and I asked him, well, "Are you doing any job?" He said, "I was getting 30,000 per month, but now I have left it because I am online teaching in Austria, and I'm doing some projects for people around the world, and this much amount I can easily earn in 10 days." So from an employer perspective, he's quickly moved to become an owner of a business.
So don't you think this will create the more job opportunities for, if you see from the Pakistani perspective, do you think that our students, or should we think on the lines to develop those skills among our students who enables them to get the jobs internationally?
That is what my last question was framed, that redefining the ethics. Right now, I remember, I'll give you an example from my Air Force days. When we used to fly as fighter pilots, so when you were attending a briefing from a leader who is taking a formation of 4 aeroplanes, so when we used to listen to that briefing as a wingman, our perspective about the briefing was different. But one day, my instructor told me, "You brief it as a leader." And when you start to brief it as a leader, your horizon broadens up. You don't start to only think as a mulazim, as somebody who's going to. Rather, although you continue to work as a mulazim, maybe in your job, but you start to understand that what an employer will like out of you to become a better employee in his company. Exactly. And that is going to open up a lot of space. So I think in the organizational behavior, as you guys are already teaching it, that while we teach the techniques of organizational behavior, there might be a requirement to change the paradigm, that don't only think as an employee, but also think the same equation, apply it as an employer on yourself, because one day we are training you to become an employer. We are looking at the future of small business coming up.
Kind of entrepreneurial abilities, entrepreneurial skills, ability to develop the small scale home-based businesses and offices, and providing the services to the more than one employer. So it develops it improves the earning ability of the individual. Or another thing that I can see from out of this scenario is that a specialization of an individual. In place of going from the different jobs, if you specialize, like you were talking about, that the Adobe's skills or the other skills, one can develop himself or specialized of the one certain few skills, and he can sell all those his skills all over the world while sitting in his home. So it's mean from if I conclude this first question, so what I could understand is that we need to redefine the skill sets for our students. We need to explore the world over opportunities from the people like you. And this is from the student's perspective. And from the employer perspective, I think employers also need to redefine their works, I mean, their office processes. They need to differentiate the works they can get from the homes and the works which are mandatory for which the people has to visit. Even I visit the banks, I've seen there are some essential functions that the people are visiting even in today in these scenarios. But most of the people, particularly from sales staff and other operational staff, most of them are they are staying homes. But generally, the essential activities are mandatory, and the people are visiting the offices. So ये इस तरह का scenario अगर हमारा ये बने तो इसमें employer and the employees they both sit together और उसमें ये they need to redefine the things in it. So what would you say, Sari? Comment on this, please.
Okay, can you just repeat the question, please? Here, I just understood that.
What I am saying that employer, not only the employees need to explore more skills for these home-based jobs and these home-based entrepreneurial SMEs or startups. Employer should also reconsider his work processes. He has to differentiate from those functions which can be done from the homes, which can be, I mean, from जिसके लिए वो hire कर सकता है एक individual को who is staying at home, and from those work processes which are mandatory for him, which can be done in the offices. So in that way, उसके लिए easy हो जाएगा कि अपने काम को define करना, काम को देखना है कौन से घर से कराए के जा सकते हैं और कौन से what are those functions that can be done in the offices.
Yes, absolutely. As I said, that it's going to be redefined at a very large scale. However, as for the scope of the class that we have today, one of the last thing which I really want to highlight here is that the technical skill set that is required for any kind of job will always sit on the back of the ethical or the normative, the requirement of a job of the soft skills. I have seen many companies, a lot of Pakistanis who come for interviews here in these airlines also here on ground jobs and all that. It is not that they are not skilled. Very small things are noticed. How they sit, how they say, how they meet up with people in a post meeting socializing, how they laugh, how they talk, how they stand. It is a misconception that companies do not look at it. They look at your dressing, they look at your punctuality, they look at your commitment, they look at your answers, that do you make sweeping statements in an interview or you're very specific. They look at
So
it.
these things are still, do you think that these things are still important?
These things will always be important. That's what I'm trying to say. They will be even more important when there will be less jobs. The competition will come up more and more. One more thing. Since now on the digital world, the cross-border job availability will become higher because now more and more people from Pakistan, the boundaries will just melt. So people in the West will be very clear. They will have a lot of choice to be made. And those students here who are slightly aware about the norms and etiquettes of working in an international organization, even a small interview or a small email will just make the difference.
Yeah.
The person who is actually sending that email or doing the interview might not be skill-wise better than another person, but he may be better in presenting himself because he had an exposure of looking at the requirement of those organizations, and they can win it this way. And we have seen it happening here. So these skills are going to be vital, even more important in the coming times.
Okay, so if we talk about the biases or we say things that generally we ignore, we may ignore, an individual may ignore, or the people may ignore. So what are those in your perspective?
Well, in psychology, we say the biases are related to humans, and it's irrespective they are students or they are teachers or they are leaders or they are anyone. We all are having our biases. One of the biggest bias that I've seen is that the students or people who are in the universities, they are sometimes not exposed to other possibilities. And a lot of teachers, when they talk, I'm talking about those teachers who are subject specialists. Like I'll talk about people who are teaching sociology or who are teaching medicines, special subjects. The problem is that we have that bias that when we belong to a certain time and era, we we tend to like everything of that era. If I give you a song of 1980s today, you're going to love it more than a youngster today, because according to NLP or neuro linguistic programming, it will activate those memories and those moods, which will definitely enhance it. So we have a lot of attachment to what we have done in our life. Now, when the students come in and they go to a supervisor, the supervisors are generally still stuck to that time era and time frame. Especially so because what happens that, unfortunately, I've seen it in the academia more, that when they start to cling to a concept or a theory, I'll give you an example from psychology, for example. If there is a person who belongs or who is an advocate of psychoanalysis as an approach of psychotherapy, when you talk about cognitive behavior therapy in front of that person in Pakistan, he says, no, it's not going to work. If you talk about psychiatrist, he will say psychology is not going to work. If you talk about to psychology about psychiatry, he say medicine should not work. This is an exact example of how our society has become intolerant. And this has come in academia also. So one of the major biases is that when children go for their PhD and ideas they want to take, so what references they have? They have a reference from their own libraries where there are old studies which were made by somebody. They just want to review it, revise it, or slightly step one more. Or they will get an idea from one of their teachers who is there, and that teacher might be using these students as his own future research resource, kind of not only limiting their thought process, but I would say violating it in a way. So biases mean that students should sit back, chill, and think out of the box.
Yeah.
There are biases which will come in from media कि जी आजकल ये वाला बहुत इन है, आजकल साइबर सिक्योरिटी का प्रोफेशन बड़ा इन है, आजकल ये वाला प्रोफेशन बहुत ज्यादा इन है, आजकल ये we cannot afford to be in a lag. पहले लैग हम अफोर्ड कर सकते थे क्योंकि टेक्नोलॉजिकल एडवांस वाज स्पैनिंग ओवर अ डेकेड. Now technological advance is spanning over months. Yeah. So if we react over years, definitely by the time हम वो चीज पकड़ के उसके मास्टर बनेंगे ना, तो 3 जनरेशन उससे आगे निकल चुकी होंगी. So we need to actually look in the future. और वो तब होगा जब हमारे बच्चे इस वेबसाइट या इस गूगल में उन चीजों को भी सोचेंगे जिसके ऊपर फ्यूचर रिसर्चेज हो रही है. प्रेजेंट रिसर्च के ऊपर दिमाग खराब करके, आई थिंक, बिकॉज द प्रॉब्लम इज हम जब रिसर्च करते हैं ना, उस रिसर्च ने अप्रूवल लेके फंडिंग का अल्टीमेटली उसने सेनेट और कौमी असेंबली में जाना होता है, आइडियली स्पीकिंग, सो दैट इट इज गिवन टू द कंसर्न्ड मिनिस्ट्री एंड दे डू समथिंग अबाउट इट. ठीक है, but unfortunately ऐसा तो होता नहीं है. There is no bill which is presented on the basis of an academic research. ऐसा तो नहीं होता. Nobody is going and presenting. present होते भी हैं तो वहां तक पहुंचते नहीं हैं. So हमारा रिसर्च का मकसद सिर्फ ये है कि हम PhD करें, किसी तरह मुल्क से बाहर चले जाएं या मुल्क के अंदर कोई अच्छी नौकरी ले लें. चले, मान लिया यही है. उसके लिए भी जो डेटम है वो ये है कि आपकी रिसर्च फ्यूचरिस्टिक होनी चाहिए. So my point here is that once you choose your subjects, please get out of PowerPoints, get out of these old 5 years, 6 years old. I call them 5, 6 year old books today as old because it is so fast and so quick in the industry, even in medicine. बाकी तो आप छोड़ दें, or even in organ. देखें पहले ना जब टीवी था ना, टीवी तो 12 साल या 20 साल के बाद जनरेशन गैप आता था. वीसीआर आया तो वो जनरेशन गैप 5 साल का हो गया. ठीक है. अब इस वक्त टिकटॉक का जमाना है. आज आप अपनी क्लास के फाइनल ईयर के स्टूडेंट और फर्स्ट ईयर के स्टूडेंट के अंदर भी अगर मुवाजना करेंगे ना, तो फाइनल ईयर वाले कहेंगे सर ये तो कौम ही कोई और निकल आई है, हालांकि उनके दरमियान सिर्फ 2 साल का गैप है. सो द जनरेशन गैप हैज श्रंक. Why, if the generation gap is shrunk, why are research initiatives and thought processes still is like बैलों के जमाने का है वो. So I think this is one of the major message which want to highlight, that how post COVID-19 especially thought process to change in selection and biases.
Great. So आज की जो discussion है हमारी, इसमें बहुत अच्छा point हमारा एक सामने आया conclusion. That is that we need to improve our research base. We need to be like, for example, just abhi scenario aaya achanak colleges universities band ho gayi, and I've seen even the teachers from the school, meri beti choti, matlab she is studying in 4th class, unki teacher ne within no time, when 1 or 2 days they were able to transform their on-campus classes to the home-based classes.
Absolutely.
Same thing happened. Same thing happened
Microsoft
in my
meetings पे Zoom पे हो रहा है सब.
Yeah, same thing happened in my university, although it's a public sector university. Even then, the teachers who are IT literate, they were very easily they switched towards these technologies. But the problem is again in Pakistan is the resources. Most of my students who are living in the remote areas where the internet facility is not there, where the other things are not there, so they are having some constraint. हम इनके बारे में we will be discussing in our coming webinars. But today we are able to identify one thing, that we need to find the new ways of doing the things. We need to become agile. Like every company, everyone, individual or even the company, they should have the agility. They should adjust themselves. Like you see the example of the China, they fought with this coronavirus. उन्होंने अपने आप, they come out of it successfully so far. दूसरी कंट्रीज में आ रहा है, पाकिस्तान के अंदर आ रहा है, पाकिस्तान is in a look and see there, our government is accidentally fighting with it. Other countries are also doing the same thing. Every country has his own scenario. So same is the case. दुनिया के काम नहीं रोक रहे. दुनिया कह रही है कि हम खुद अभी कह रहे हैं, like for example shops are closed everywhere. Now I have seen the लोग कह रहे हैं कि कोई बात नहीं, हमें उस दिन हमें फोन आया, मैसेज आया कि if you need some electronics, just call us. We will provide you this electronics at your doorsteps. So people have started finding the new way of doing things. ये काम रुकेगा नहीं. So आज की डिस्कशन हमारी बहुत अच्छी रही. आपने टाइम दिया, निशाद साहब बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया आपका, बहुत अच्छा लगा. और आपसे हमारे 1-2 और हमारे कंटिन्यूसली हमारे रिकरेंट सेशंस होंगे. इसके ऊपर हम इस सिनेरियो को मजीद एक्सप्लोर करेंगे विद अ डिफरेंट पर्सपेक्टिव. So viewers, I hope कि आज की हमारी जो डिस्कशन है, जो मेरा मकसद था इस डिस्कशन को इनिशिएट करने का, आपको मेरी बात समझ आ गई होगी कि मैं एक प्रोफेशनल, जो लोग इंडस्ट्री में बैठे हुए हैं, वो क्या सोचते हैं इस सिनेरियो को, वो जॉब्स के हवाले से. हम बिजनेसमैन से भी बात करेंगे, हम टीचर से भी बात करेंगे, रिसर्चर से भी बात करेंगे, प्रोफेशनल से भी बात करेंगे. I hope this would help my students in the universities, and all those who will be attending this webinar will definitely get benefit from it. So thank you very much. So please share this video with your friends and colleagues, and also subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much.